I applaud people for keeping a straight face and trying to keep it under control as much as they did. Welcome to my channel, Outspoken Samantha. If you are new here, welcome. I hope you'll subscribe. If you're returning, welcome back. Thank you so much for the support, and I hope that you are subscribed as well. I like to give my opinionated perspective on things that are happening today, things that I think actually matter to everyday people, especially those of us trying to raise kids in the insanity known as today's society. I talk about current events and politics and just whatever's happening in the world that I think needs another opinion. So I would love your support. Just leave your thoughts in the comments below, and also be sure that you are following my channel. Also, be sure to head on over to Rumble and find me there under Outspoken Samantha in the event that YouTube decides I have violated their community standards and chooses to kick me off their platform forever. That being said, let's get into today's topic. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about the Twitter Files hearings that have been going on for the last week or so involving Matt Taibbi and Michael Shellenberger. And if you haven't been following super closely, the Twitter Files are basically exposés that were released on Twitter by various journalists. Matt and Michael were two of them, Barry Weiss was another one, and they were given information that pretty much substantiated the long-held belief by people that advocate for free speech that Twitter has been partnered in some way at some level with the FBI to target and suppress speech that countered or questioned certain narratives particularly pushed by the left. For instance, like when the Hunter Biden laptop story broke in 2020, the media and leftist officials pushed this idea that this was Russian disinformation, that there was nothing there, that anybody saying that there was anything corrupt on there was spreading misinformation and lying about it. And coincidentally, at the same time that they were pushing this narrative, any outlet, that was more conservative leaning, most notably the New York Post that reported otherwise, just surprisingly had their account suspended. Come to find out just a couple of years later, the media knew it was not Russian disinformation. And despite Hunter saying that he didn't know if the laptop was his or not, it turns out it's been 100% verified that it is Hunter Biden's laptop. And despite Joe saying that he had never spoken to his son about his overseas business dealings, there was in-depth evidence on this laptop to indicate otherwise. And of course, we've seen this in the cases of reporting on COVID, depending on what you were saying about COVID, that your account could be suspended. Like if you talked about the origins of COVID, if you thought maybe there was some legitimacy to it being it having originated in a lab in China, then again your account could be restricted. What these hearings are about are these three journalists that expose this overall censorship, that have emails to back it up, that have communication back and forth requesting certain accounts to be suspended or to be silenced or tweets to be removed because they would make people question what the left wants us to believe. It's also really important to note that none of these journalists that are being questioned right now are conservative. Matt Taibbi, Michael Shellenberger, Barry Weiss, they have all worked for left-leaning publications. From what I know, they have all primarily voted Democrat, so they are not Trump supporters, they're not conservative, they're not on the right in any way, and neither is Elon Musk for that matter, but it was only after he took over Twitter that they had access to the information to say that, hey, there is some questionable activity going on here, and there is some legitimacy to the accounts that Twitter has chosen to censor versus the ones they have not. And coincidentally, it just happens to be accounts that lean right. And it's funny because I have seen a few instances where there are people that are labeling Matt Taibbi as a MAGA Republican. And what this is telling, because anytime we get more truth, we get more information, or we get more transparency, the left automatically associates that with the right. They automatically associate more information with being a MAGA Republican. They automatically associate free speech and being an advocate for people to be able to speak freely with being on the right, which shows us what their values are, which is to not be transparent and to control speech. The first representative that we were just delighted to hear from, her name is Stacey Plaskett, and she's a Democrat from the Virgin Islands. And This woman is not smart. And I don't say that just because she's on the left, and I don't say that because I'm a racist, because I know somebody's going to accuse me of that. I was able to just listen to her comments and her questions and the way she framed things and just draw my own conclusions about this woman's just utter lack of intelligence. In her opening statements, she so desperately tried to discredit Tybee and Schellenberger by calling them so-called journalists.
This isn't just a matter of what data was given to these so-called journalists before us now. There are many legitimate questions about where Musk got the financing to buy Twitter.
And I love the look on Matt and Michael's faces. They just had to shake their head and laugh. They are in utter disbelief by what she just said to them, but Matt Tybee's response to this was perfect.
Ranking Member Plaskett, I'm not a so-called journalist. I've won the National Magazine Award, the I.F. Stone Award for Independent Journalism, and I've written 10 books, including 4 New York Times bestsellers.
The only reason that she's calling them so-called journalists, because clearly they are credible, clearly they have experience and they know what they're doing. The only reason she's doing this is because she's trying to get her base not to take them seriously. But this is where it comes in handy to think for yourself, because just because someone calls you something doesn't make it true. What are the facts? Is this person repeatedly reporting stories that aren't true? Can you cite numerous cases of their work being debunked and them being discredited in their work by reputable sources? Because if we want to go down that road, we could spend the next few hours talking about CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times repeatedly reporting things that have been debunked. Those are people that I would definitely label so-called journalists. If someone has a solid record of research, experience, and reporting, they deserve respect in their field. This doesn't mean that you have to agree with everything that they say, or that they aren't going to miss certain details or miss things that you think would have been relevant to their stories. But if they present the information in a way that leaves most of the conclusion drawing to the reader, then I think that that is basically credible journalism, instead of what the media does, which is 10% reporting on the information and 90% telling you what you should think about that information. And then as she's trying to further question these two journalists and make herself seem like she is far smarter than they are, this happens.
Yes.
I thank the gentlelady for yelling. I just think this is interesting. First, the FTC is asking for your background. And now the ranking member of the Committee on the Weaponization of Government is asking for your sources.
I never asked them for their sources.
Yes,
I did not ask for sources. Who gave you access to these emails? Who was the individual that gave you permission to access the emails?
Well, the attribution from my story is sources at Twitter, and that's what I'm going to refer to.
Okay. Did Mr. Musk contact you, Mr. Taibbi?
Again, the attribution from my story is sources at Twitter.
So essentially, she's gaslighting in real time. So the next kind of interesting interaction comes between Representative Goldman from California and Michael Schellenberger. Goldman brings up the Hunter Biden laptop story, and he tries to have this gotcha moment with Schellenberger, where he wants Schellenberger to say that the hard drive was tampered with, and that some of the information on the laptop was incorrect, so therefore some of the reporting on it by people on the right would have been incorrect, as we're trying to paint Hunter Biden and in turn Joe Biden as corrupt.
We're not talking about authenticity. We're not talking about authenticity. We're talking about whether it's been altered.
Yeah.
Okay? There's no question there's some material on the hard drive that is authentic and accurate. But are you aware that there's some material that is not?
My understanding is that there are copies of the hard drive that have been tampered with, and that media organizations, including CBS, have verified that the laptop in question was not tampered with.
Then Matt Gaetz steps in.
We are here focused on a weaponized government, a whole of government approach that has been turned against the American people. And while Rudy Giuliani may have been running around with the laptop in 2020, what is an indisputable fact is that the FBI had the laptop in 2019. And it appears that the last round of questioning misses the boat, that it's true. The information is authentic.
And then he brings us back to the topic at hand, which is what we really need to be focusing on.
This FTC consent decree, where it is government action subject to rigorous scrutiny under First Amendment standards, government action demanding that your names be listed. How did it feel when you found out that you were being expressly targeted by a government document based on your reporting?
was chilling. I mean, it's disturbing. I never thought that would happen in the United States of America, to be perfectly honest. I've lived in a bunch of authoritarian countries. I've visited a lot of authoritarian countries. Never thought this kind of thing would be going on here.
And the nexus to authoritarianism is the desire to control the nature of truth itself. Our understandings change about things. We learn new things. We challenge prior assumptions. But if a bunch of people in Washington, D.C. get to decide what the truth is, and then enforce it on the country, and then punish and target those who report on their conduct, we are drifting more toward that. How did you feel, Mr. Taibbi, when you saw your name?
I was upset, obviously. I lived in Russia during the 90s and early 2000s. I was there when Putin took power. I was friends with a group of very brave, muckraking reporters in Russia, many of whom didn't make it. A few of them were murdered after Putin came to power. So I've always been conscious of how the risks that other reporters take in other countries are incredibly severe, and that's one of the reasons why I'm motivated to protect the First Amendment, because our country has the best protections for reporters in the world.
This, I thought, was probably the most important point of this entire thing. First, Matt Gaetz points out the nexus to authoritarianism is the desire to control the nature of truth itself. And the reason that I think this is so important is that this is where this idea of my truth versus the truth comes in. The left has been pushing this whole idea that your truth is the only thing that matters, that it doesn't matter what evidence shows us or what can be proven with data or statistics or verifiable facts. It only matters what your perception of the situation is. And then the leftist base, who have fallen in line with this idea and have become the loudest voices, who promote this idea that my truth is the only truth that matters. They push this idea for these leftist officials because they truly think that these government officials that have made my truth the most important thing, they really think that it's because they care about their experiences and they want their voices to be heard and they want their experiences to be validated, and that they're really just looking out for them. But that's not the objective at all. If these people in office can get you to support the idea that truth is subjective and that the perception of a situation is the only thing that's legitimate, they can and they will use that against you. And this is leading us towards the path of the government's truth versus the people's truth. And they've gotten you to accept this idea that whatever someone's perception of events is more credible than what actually happened. So it doesn't matter what evidence shows us. It doesn't matter what fact shows us. It doesn't matter what you see with your own eyes and hear with your own ears. If the people in power disagree and their perception of the truth is different, they're the ones that are calling the shots, and they can use that to restrict your access to basic necessities and to punish you and to even criminalize you. And they've already shown us that they are willing to do these kinds of things. Off topic, but still relevant. We've seen the full footage of the events of January 6th come out. We've seen just how cherry-picked that footage was to push this idea that this was the most dangerous event in American history, that it was equivalent to or even worse than September 11th. And they had to go through all of this footage. They have seen all of it. They had to go through all of it and pick out the things that would support that narrative and hide the things that would discredit it. And by deciding on the narrative and what they wanted the outcome to be, they specifically selected things that supported their truth. And because of that, we have dozens of American citizens who have been sitting in a DC jail facing the most inhumane treatment that most of us have probably never heard of in this country. They are being starved and beaten, abused, and put in solitary confinement. And now that we've seen the footage of what actually happened on January 6th, there is no justification for the kind of treatment that they are receiving. Now, are there some criminal charges warranted? Probably vandalizing property and trespassing and perhaps even some threatening behavior, and that is fine. Find the evidence and charge them according to their crime. But the people in power wanted to label these people as terrorists, and they wanted to be able to treat them as such. So they manipulated the evidence to justify the label that they had already given them and to justify the treatment that they already wanted to impose on them, even though the truth shows us that the labels and the treatment that they have been given given is completely unwarranted. Now these people are enduring absolutely abhorrent treatment, knowing that it's not justified, knowing that the punishment does not fit the crime, and knowing that they know the truth, but they are not allowed to be heard. And this matters because this system of justice can and will be imposed on any of us. It's not just the right or left, though they want you to believe that it is. This is we the people versus the government. And you might think because you protest for them, or because you voted for them, or because you push the kind of indoctrination that they want into our public schools, that they're going to protect you and side with you and that they have your back. But if you think that, you are incredibly naive. You are being used to push this kind of power forward, but you are absolutely crazy if you think that they won't use it against you. And just to bring it back full circle, this is evidenced by the fact that, again, none of these journalists that are being questioned right now are conservatives. They are all on the left. They've been praised for their work. They've received awards for their work, and they have been generally supported and validated by people on the left. But the second that they exposed something that the left didn't like, suddenly they found their names on this list. And this really made me even further, more than I already do, but further question the leftist media as a whole. As we're watching what's happening to Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger and the way that they're being treated by leftist officials right now, who up until 5 minutes ago were their allies, it really makes you wonder how many leftist reporters report the things that they do because they don't want this to be them. How many people are given what the government wants them to say, and they do it because they know that if they speak out or if they fall out of line, it'll be them that's discredited and targeted, and it could be their name that ends up on a list for the FBI. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do think that there are a lot of people in the media right now that believe a lot of things that they say, and they are only too happy to go along with the corruption. They're just as evil and power hungry as the people that are trying to ruin our country right now. But I would also bet that there's a good handful of reporters out there that are looking at what's happening to Taibbi and Schellenberger right now, and the fact that these two are being made an example of what happens if you step out of line, and they're looking at them and going, I don't want that to be me, and they're just going to keep doing what they're doing for that reason, out of fear. So you just have to look at a lot of these guys and wonder who's reporting because they actually believe it's the truth, or who's reporting because they just want to go along with marching orders because they know that the protection that they have by being promoters of the leftist agenda is an illusion, and they know that just one misstep and they could be the next one in the seat that Taibbi or Schellenberger is occupying right now. And of course, we have to talk about the interaction between Sylvia Garcia, who's a Democrat from Texas, and Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger, because it was pretty astonishing and pretty funny a lot of times. But in this interaction with Sylvia Garcia, first she tries to discredit them by talking about their publications on Substack, and she has no idea what Substack is. So it's almost like she thinks that they're trying to pass as journalists by posting on this thing called Substack, but because she has no idea what it is, then it means it's not legitimate.
Yet you yourself posted on your I guess it's kind of like a web page. I don't quite understand what Substack is, but that what I can say is that...
And then she goes on to ask Taibbi about this particular date and asking him if this is the date that he met with Elon Musk. And Matt says, well, I'm not going to tell you this because that would mean giving up my source. And she insists that she's not asking for a source, that she just wants the date.
Approach you about writing the Twitter files.
Again, Congresswoman, that would...
I just need a date, sir.
But I can't give it to you, unfortunately, because this is a question of sourcing, and I don't give up. I'm a journalist. I don't reveal my sources.
It's a question of chronology.
No, that's a question of sourcing.
Because you earlier said that someone had sent you through the internet some message about whether or not you would be interested in some information.
Yes, and I referred to that person as a source.
So you're not going to tell us when Musk first approached you?
Again, Congresswoman, you're asking me you're asking a journalist to reveal a source.
So then you consider Mr. Musk to be the direct source of all this?
No, now you're trying to get me to say that he is the source. I just can't answer your question.
He isn't. If you're telling me you can't answer because it's your source, well, then the only logical conclusion is that he is, in fact, your source.
Well, you're free to conclude that.
Well, sir, I just don't understand. You can't have it both ways, but let's move on because...
No, he can. He's a journalist.
No, he can't, because either Musk is the source and he can't talk about it, or Musk is not the source And if Musk is not the source, then he can discuss
It's just bewildering to watch because I truly, truly think that this woman is stupid. And she has no idea that she is asking him to reveal his sources by saying, did you meet with Elon Musk on, December 9th? I don't know what date she actually put out there, but I just want the date. And he says, I'm not going to tell you the date because that would be revealing my sources. And she's like, well, I'm not asking you to give a name. I just want the date. He's like, but if I tell you the date, then I'm admitting that I met with Elon Musk on that date. And she truly thinks that it's just about chronology. And it's absolutely just astounding to watch. And then the genius next to her tries to defend her question by saying, if Musk isn't the source, then he can discuss it. And if he is the source, then he won't talk about it and it'll be fine. But if he answers the question either way, then he's giving you information about his sources. Like, if he doesn't talk about it, then you're going to take that as confirmation that Musk is the source because he's not saying anything. But if he says Elon Musk is not the source simply because he doesn't want to reveal that he is, then he could be held accountable for lying later. So you've painted him into this impossible corner because of your own ridiculous questioning. And then, of course, all of our favorite moments came when Sylvia Garcia just asked this really awkward question.
By a friend, Barry Weiss?
My friend Barry Weiss.
So this friend works for Twitter, or what is her...
She's a journalist.
Sir, I didn't ask you a question. I'm now asking Mr. Schellenberger a question. Please
Yes,
do
ma'am.
not
Barry Weiss is
interrupt.
a journalist.
I'm sorry, sir?
She's a journalist.
She's a journalist. So you work in concert with her?
Yeah.
Do you know when she first was contacted by Mr. Musk?
I don't know.
You don't know. So you're in this as a threesome?
There was many more people involved than that.
I'm sorry. I know that we are not in middle school, but I applaud people for keeping a straight face and trying to keep it under control as much as they did. You can hear people on the stand laughing. You can see people in the background laughing. You can see Matt Taibbi and Matthew Schellenberger trying not to lose it and just to keep a straight face. And of course, Schellenberger's response to it was perfect when he's like, well, actually, there were more people involved than that. So between Representative Goldman trying to bring up the Russian investigation and Stacey Klasky calling these guys so-called journalists, and then Sylvia Garcia just putting a nice little cherry on top and asking if they were all in a threesome together, I think we can all just go home now. But guys, this is why in the United States of America that we elect people to represent us and not to control us. Because sometimes we do end up with really great people in office who are smart, who know what they're doing, and do their best to actually represent the unique needs of the community that elected them. And sometimes we end up with people that are just dumb as a brick who have absolutely no idea what they're doing or what they're talking about. And these are the people that want more power. These are the people who want you to think that they know more than you do, and they want to control the information that we have access to because they think that they are able to determine what is useful to know and what is not. And the question is, do you believe them? Do you think that any of these people should be deciding for you whether or not you're capable of assessing information and determining for yourself what it is that you need to know and what you don't need to know, what is best for you versus what may not be in your best interest? Should they be able to control the narrative? And do you believe that when they say they want to control it, that it's really to keep you safe and healthy, and that it's really to look out for your well-being? Because I bet the people that are rotting in the DC jail right now over these January 6th events would have a pretty solid answer for that question. So let me know your thoughts on this. Please like this video, leave your thoughts in the comments below, share it with others. Also, be sure you are subscribed. Hit the notification bell so you can be notified every time I post a video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.